Hi, everybody. Stephanie here to interview our friends, Tony and Beth. Tony Ross and Beth Rapier Ross from the Minnesota area. Long time Bach Dancing and Dynamite Society stalwarts. And of course, we are missing them so much right now during what would have been our season. So we thought we'd do a mini interview with them, and then they're going to play some music for you. So hi, Tony and Beth. How you doing?
Hi, we're good.
Good.
I want to ask you just a question about your life over the last couple of months. Now you're in Minneapolis, right in the middle of the most terrible turmoil over George Floyd, as well as the loss of the orchestra, at least for now. Tell us what life has been like for you the last couple of months.
You want to start?
Go?
Okay, I'll start. Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, it's been horrific. These dual tragedies of COVID, and then of course the murder of George Floyd, and the protests and riots. I mean, many of businesses that I know have been destroyed and burned down. The sadness over this action, this murder, and the how it's highlighted the problems in society with racism. Even though we're doing well, I mean, we're not crying every day, but we do cry often about it because it is really sad times.
Yeah, I mean, the main event, the murder happened, 15 minutes from our house, and a neighborhood that's, nearby, and we often went there for, restaurants. And those nights that the riots were happening, there were just helicopters over our house in the area all the time, and we had to close the windows because the smoke was so bad, and it was just heartbreaking and scary. And yeah, the community was just, furious and heartbroken. And
I mean, I think on some level, our civic leaders did okay because there was minimal loss of life. In fact, I don't think anybody has been killed in the riots yet, maybe one person. And it was a really tricky line to draw for our governor as far as let's get some peace, some civil peace. At the same time, we had to use some kind of force to do that. So it was a really tough line to tread without seeming brutal again, where, this police brutality was clearly the reason for this murder. So, we are where we are, and we're Minnesotans. I mean, the beauty of it was that the next morning, after every one of the destructive parts of the riots, the community, everybody was out there with brooms and shovels and bags cleaning up. So by noon the next day, all the glass, everything was cleaned up every time.
Yeah, and donations, people were dropping off their, there were just lines and lines of cars dropping off bags of groceries for, people that places were wrecked. And so, yeah, there's a lot of heart here, and we'll get through it. But
yep. And then, of course, for us being in the Minnesota Orchestra, which takes a large crowd for us to be successful, like 2,000 people. That's another real sad thing going on for us because, as being in a full-time big American orchestra, we're playing multiple concerts every week, our whole lives, essentially. And here we are, we haven't gone on stage for since March 13th. And that for me is also, I don't want to be too much of a downer because, we find a way to be happy, but it's certainly a sadness in the background.
That sounds hard, bad, hard, a lot of hard times. And well, you're talking about, of course, the orchestra, and we're all in this, having this bizarre time when none of us can get together and create music together. At home, how are you creating music? What are you listening to? What are you playing? What are you reading? What are you watching that helps you through an incredibly hard time like this?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was crazy at first when everything was canceled, and I just remember looking at my calendar and just like, you know, marking everything out. Nothing's gonna happen. And what a bizarre feeling. And I was just kind of paralyzed. And then we just kind of like, you know, began gradually looking around our old house here and, you know, seeing all the things that we could do, projects with the house and piles of music, projects with this music, and looking at new duos and kind of cleaning things out. And then just walking, we were walking so much all over neighborhoods that we've not been in. And it's a great
Right.
city to walk. And
Yeah, you know, one of the big benefits is the extra time, because you can take your time on things, including our practice, which I've taken a lot more time in my practice sessions, which is great for re-examining your playing and really trying to come to a new level. But even something like I did a tile job that we hated this tile we had by this fireplace. So I got my chisel out and I got it all out of there, you know, and I found this new tile and I put it in, but it took me like 5 trips to the tile store, and I wanted to go really slow because I wanted it to look professional, even though I'm, of course, an amateur tile guy. But, you know, I took the time to make it look good. And it took, you know, during regular times when we're busy with rehearsals and concerts, I don't have that kind of time to make 5 trips to the tile store and get everything exactly right, you know, on that kind of thing.
I'm amazed the tile store was open. How'd you even do that?
No, they were open in a suburb.
And that's right, not in the city.
Like, you know, you're right. The time that you've got is a gift, and it's you know, that's one of the very few really positive things that comes out of this. We all have time in our lives that, you know, for better or for worse, I suppose, but you can make use of it in a really great way. It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Right. It's like the first time in my life that I could sit there and finish the New York Times Saturday crossword multiple weeks in a row.
Yeah, our garden looks really good this year. You know, just things that we never are able to keep up with. Reading, you asked about reading. We've been reading a lot of authors from Vietnam because the orchestra was supposed to go on a tour this month to Vietnam before COVID. And so I had ordered all these books of, you know, Vietnamese writers. And so we're kind of going through those. They're fascinating. And if we ever go, we'll be.
Some of the highlights of the reading that you've been doing, you know, later off the air. I'd be interested. I've never read anything by a Vietnamese author.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot of good stuff.
I really like the one. What's it called? The pair. I forgot the name.
Catfish and Mandala.
Catfish and Mandala.
That's a good one.
Oh. Okay.
Music. I mean, I feel like it's that desert island thing, the Bach Suites. If you were stuck on the desert island with your cello, what would you want? And the Bach Suites pretty much have everything in them. So
yeah, and there's something about Bach, you know, that you know, I've played all 6 suites multiple times. I probably played all 6 by the time I was 22, at least, or maybe 20 even. And so since then, you know, as cello players, we usually are working on one all the time. So I'm 60 years old. That was 40 years ago when I first did all 6 of them. And we go through them so many times, and they continue to give you things as a performer and as a listener. No matter how many times you play them, it's amazing with Bach that way.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, you know, Bach is desert island music for me too. And there's something about his music that, I mean, his music can speak to every condition. And he's a person who lived a very full life and lived through war and famine and disease outbreaks, you know, epidemics. So he lived through things like we are living through now. And that you hear that lived experience in his music. It's just, you know, can be profoundly beautiful, even when it's incredibly light. Some of the movements of Bach are super light and airy, and even those are profound in their airiness, in their lightness. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true. And with the suites, I found that, 1 through 6, Bach was fascinated with numbers, and 6 was an important number to him as well. But as you go through the suites, each one is like an exploration of the key of the prelude. It's like almost like a fantasy, the prelude, and an exploration of that key. And as you go from 1 all the way to 6, it's almost like harmony is the most important thing in the first suite. But as you progress, melody gets a little more important each suite. And by the time you get to the 6th suite, they're pretty much equal. And maybe melody's even starting to take over a little bit. I mean, it's very interesting to me that way. So.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about the pieces that you chose to play.
And anything about them that you think we should know about your relationship to those pieces?
Well, I think, as I remember, when you guys suggested having us each do a movement of Bach, I said to him, "Oh, I love the way you play the Allemande from the 6. You should play that, because not everybody can play that."
And I always do what she says.
Pretty much. And then I think I asked you, I said, "Well, what do you like that I play with Bach?" And he was like, "Oh, play the Quran. I love the way your ornaments or something." So we just kind of we hear each other playing it all the time. And so it's like, we just kind of checked each other.
I never told you this, but,
you
of course, these are suites, and they're based on the French suite. And when Beth plays, when she decides to do an ornamentation, like she's doing this Quran, you'll hear, for me, it's very French, actually. And she has French blood in her as well, which I think, it's funny. We can never get away from our true DNA, I think.
Interesting.
That's great. That's great. I think Jeffrey knows this, but I found a book of transcriptions of all the 6 suites for flute.
Oh, wow.
And somebody made it. I don't know who it was, but it's been really, really a joy to play all the way through several times. And I find that I don't always agree with the transcription choices that the guy made, but like 80% I do.
Right.
And it's great.
Well, one thing, and sometimes we're learning a few new repertoire things. In fact, Jeffrey, I learned the first Schnittke cello sonata, which I'd love to play with you sometime. It's an unbelievably profound piece.
Wow, love to.
It's really tricky cello part, but I finally learned it. I had the music for like 10 years. So.
Good. We'll put it on our list. Our to-do list.
Our to-do list, for sure. I was going to say one other thing about transcriptions of the cello suites. Maybe you guys know this. Once upon a time, I played the viola. I mean, we can make all the viola jokes you want, but once upon a time, I played the viola all the way through college. And the hardest piece that I ever played, probably on any instrument ever, was the first of the cello suites in its viola transcription. But what a joy to not just to play such great music, but the tactile joy of playing that music. It's just, it feels so good. As hard as it is, it feels good to play it. Whenever I play Bach on the piano or the harpsichord, it feels cleansing in a certain kind of way. And I love that about it. And I found that to be just completely true for the cello suite as well, the G major cello suite.
Cool. Pablo Casals said about the cello suites that, and it's true actually, he said it once he discovered them in that music store in Barcelona, or was it Madrid, I can't remember, that he felt like it took him 12 years of practice before he would play any of them in public. 12 years.
Wow.
I can believe that.
It's a good thing he lived to be so old, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
And he was amazing at them. I remember one time I was Googling something to listen to some cello player, and it came up, well, listen to Pablo Casals play the prelude from the first suite. So I clicked on it, and there he was in some church. There was actually a video of him playing it, and it sounded great. And so the minute I did that, and I said, wow, I mean, I hadn't listened to him for years, and it was like, this is like the way to do it. Every other cello player came up, famous one, Rostropovich, Dupre, Yo-Yo Ma, whoever. And so playing the first prelude. So I clicked on them all. Said I'm going to do a comparison. So I clicked on them all, and I have to say I went back and my favorite was still Pablo.
I so remember the cover of that record, that LP.
The LP, yeah, we have 2 of those
I brought
actually.
it home from the library when I was a little girl, and I think it was my first experience of Bach was hearing Casals play those suites, and they became huge favorites in our house. We heard them many, 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 many times, and I'll always remember that cover.
Right.
Yeah, he was the one who brought it all to America for sure. I don't know about Europe, but
Well, and you know, his humanitarianism was so remarkable, that, and bringing music into that. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're basically all, you know, trying to feed the human soul, and you know, that's why we all play music. So.
well, it's so great to see you guys.
It's
We
great
miss
to see
you
you.
so much. I can't wait till we can get together. It's gonna happen. We just have to hang on.
It is going to happen. It is going to happen, and we'll be able to do things and be together and have great music and share great stories again soon.
Worst comes to worst, we could always get some huge house out into the country and everybody will move there.
I did play a chamber concert streamed online last Sunday. With spacing, you know, we all spaced, we all wore
With
masks,
masks,
and we played a couple quintets. It was unbelievably fun to do it. I don't know how it sounded online. There were a bunch of comments that maybe our sound engineer wasn't doing everything he needed to do, but I just enjoyed playing through great music with.
Yeah, that would have been so comforting. I would love that too.
Yeah.
Can't wear a mask though, unfortunately. It's not in my repertoire. So enjoy that, and I hope you have many more sessions like that.
Well,
All right.
it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for playing for us and for chatting with us, and you know, for being just such wonderful friends over so many years, decades now. Decades, not years, decades. You know, really, you have been some of the bedrock artists of Bach Dancing and Dynamite, and we know we love you. Our audiences love you, both as artists and as people. So, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love you guys, and we want to come back and be with BDDS as soon as possible.
We need us too. So us too. Well, you take care. Stay safe. Keep
And
safe.
still
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.